What's up, guys? I just thought there was something interesting I wanted to talk about real quick. This is where I live. I live in the South Bronx, those of you who don't know, in New York City. Born, raised, lived here all my life, and always lived somewhere within 5-6 mile radius. So I've been here all my life. I bought this house back in 2004. I've been here for some time now. But the reason I bring this up, and bear with me for a second, I'm on my way to work. But where I live is called Minford Place. That's my block, my street. And what I wanted to talk about real quick was, let me show you real quick if you could see that. This is Minford Place, but as you could see, the cross street is Charlotte Street. And the reason I bring that up is because this street going up this block is a well-known area in the South Bronx and became famous because 3 United States presidents actually walked right down Charlotte Street. And I don't think there's too many neighborhoods or places anywhere in the United States that aren't affiliated with politics or like well-known destinations for like a tourist or anything that could say something like that. So back in when I was growing up in the 70s, this was known as the worst slum in America. And the person that actually coined that phrase was Jimmy Carter. Back in 1977, he came right through this neighborhood. And the reason he visited was because of the state of the neighborhood. Everything was abandoned buildings, rubble. Maybe some of you recognize a documentary called The Bronx is Burning, and it's centered around the Yankees in the 1977 World Series, but the backdrop of the story was about how this whole neighborhood was actually in flames, nothing but burning buildings. Let me pull over real quick. I want to shut this thing off. Anyhow, this is Boston Road right here. And so Jimmy Carter paid a visit because of how bad things were around here. And the best way I could describe it is that if you ever seen any documentaries or any video footage of Berlin or Germany after the World War II, and everything was just burned down, destroyed, rubble, that's exactly how this neighborhood was, believe it or not. And I can remember as a kid, I was about 6 years old or 7, just around the time Jimmy Carter paid a visit. And I remember my mother walking me and my brother right through this neighborhood, right down Charlotte Street, which was ground zero for this area. And that's why Jimmy Carter visited in 1977, and that's where he coined that phrase, worst slum in America. So, moving on to the next president to visit Charlotte Street, Ronald Reagan paid a visit in 1980 during his presidential campaign. And the reason he came was, of course, he wanted to point out how Jimmy Carter had paid a visit 3 years earlier and nothing had changed. And he was right, but of course, as history would go on to prove, he also did nothing about it, and he was just using it as a, political backdrop in his campaign. But he came, he actually held part of his campaign right on Charlotte Street. And the next time a United States president actually walked down Charlotte Street was in 1997, and Bill Clinton walked down Charlotte Street. But at that time, it was as you see it now. All these houses that you see, that surround the neighborhood, and which is one of the ones I bought, this neighborhood had changed dramatically. So as you see it now, it looks like any other typical neighborhood in the US. Nothing special, but if you compare it to what it once was, the worst slum in America, it is a huge improvement. So Bill Clinton came, and just to pay a visit to the area and see how things had changed. There's a lot more that was involved in how this neighborhood changed, but the reason I did the video, I thought it was just an interesting story. I like to tell people who come and visit for the first time, and I like to tell them about the neighborhood and what it used to be and how it changed. And of course, for me, the most interesting part is the fact that 3 United States presidents walked right down Charlotte Street, which is the block right behind my house, which you can see it from my backyard. So that was just an interesting little story about my neighborhood, where I grew up. And I don't know, maybe most of you guys wouldn't give 2 shits about it, but just in case any of you are interested in knowing a little more about that time and what I was just talking about, I put a link in the description to a couple of videos that will show you exactly what this neighborhood was like. It does go into some detail about when Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan came. Also, I highly recommend, if anybody really wants to see what this area of the South Bronx was like in that time, I highly recommend a movie called Fort Apache to Bronx, starring Paul Newman. It's a film that came out in the early 80s. It's not a great film, but it's an interesting film, and it shows the South Bronx as it was, and without any Hollywood polish on it. It was really accurate, and it really shows you what the South Bronx was like, and it's just something that's interesting to me. There wasn't a lot of footage. You know, that time in this area wasn't well documented. There's not a lot of footage. So I put a couple of links in the description for those of you who are interested, and that's it. I just thought that was a cool little story, you know. 3 United States presidents visited my neighborhood, and more precisely the block right behind my house. So what do you guys think? I look forward to your comments. Later.